TSA fires 3 bullets at a black judge. Minutes later, she walks into federal court and destroys their entire system. The first bullet grazed her shoulder. The second shattered the terminal window behind her. The third embedded in the concrete pillar where families once hugged goodbye. And 4 seconds later, the woman officer Kevin Bradley thought was just another suspicious passenger stood up. Blood streaming down her arm, she looked him directly in the eye and said, "You just shot a federal judge, officer. I suggest you holster that weapon immediately." No one breathed. Not Kevin, with his gun trembling in his grip. Not the passengers crouched behind luggage carts and magazine racks. Not the TSA agents frozen mid-command. Silence didn't fall. It crashed, like a gavel, in the courtroom Maya Washington was about to create right here in Terminal C. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to be loud. It cut like a ruling a decade overdue. She stood tall, bleeding, her coat torn and crimson at the shoulder. Her left arm hung heavy, drops pattering onto bleach-white tile, but her gaze didn't wobble. "I'm unarmed," she said. "I complied with every instruction you gave me. So let me ask you something, Officer Bradley. What exactly did you see that made you choose to pull that trigger?" Kevin's eyes skittered like a cornered animal. Sweat beaded despite the airport's aggressive air conditioning. She reached," he stammered. Reached fast into her jacket. "Could have been anything." Maya raised her right hand, slow, deliberate. Pinched between her fingers, a crumpled boarding pass for Flight 447 to Charleston. This piece of paper terrified you so much you emptied your clip? That's not what happened." A woman's voice, clean as a bell, cut from behind the metal detector. Jordan Williams, 23, rookie TSA agent, son of a Birmingham mechanic and a substitute teacher, took 2 shaking steps forward. His hands trembled, but his voice held steady. "I was watching the whole time." She didn't lunge. She didn't raise her voice. She asked why she was being detained, and you drew your weapon before she even finished the question. Kevin's jaw clenched. "Agent Williams, stand down, now!" Jordan didn't move. He tapped his smartwatch. "I started recording when your voice changed. You know that shift you get when you think nobody important is watching? I've worked with you 8 months, Officer Bradley. I know that shift." Phones sprouted from pockets like second spines. A teenager near Gate 12 live-streamed to 50 followers who were about to become 50,000. "Yo, did TSA just shoot a federal judge?" His voice cracked on judge like the word might shatter. Maya turned toward the kid. "Keep filming," she said softly. "Everything." Paramedics burst through security, breathless. "Ma'am, you've been shot." "We need immediate medical—" "You'll do so after every body camera, every security feed, and every witness statement is logged into an unbroken chain of custody," Maya said, raising her blood-wet hand. "Nothing lost. Nothing edited. Nothing misfiled. Ma'am, you're bleeding heavily." "Then we'd better move fast," she replied, "and do it right, or not at all." Behind her, Kevin still gripped his service weapon, though lower now. His supervisor arrived. Richards, gray-haired, radio dangling from his vest like a broken promise. "What the hell happened here?" "Non-compliant passenger," Kevin rasped. "Refused lawful commands. Made aggressive movements." "She was holding a boarding pass," Jordan countered. "Watch still recording." She asked one question. "Why am I being detained?" That's when he drew. Pain seeped through Maya's adrenaline like acid through steel. She hadn't planned to reveal herself like this, not bleeding under fluorescence while children watched nightmares take shape. She looked at Richards. "My name is Judge Maya Alexandria Washington. I serve on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, and I just became living evidence of what happens when you give a man like Officer Bradley a badge and a fear he's never learned to control." The words detonated. Gasps ricocheted off high ceilings. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Richards went pale. "Call your director," Maya continued. "Call your legal team. Call whoever you need. This airport is now a federal crime scene, and I'm about to turn it into a courtroom." Richards fumbled at his radio. "And Officer Bradley?" She faced Kevin, who looked ready to vomit. Some people don't just have rights. They know how to enforce them. 6 hours earlier, Maya had stepped out of her Georgetown townhouse in jeans, white sneakers, and a navy jacket. Every detail deliberate. Today she wasn't traveling as Judge Washington, honorable, robed, escorted. She was traveling as Maya, a 34-year-old black woman with a boarding pass and a theory she prayed would be wrong. 3 weeks ago, her nephew Marcus had been randomly selected for enhanced screening at Reagan National. 18, honor roll kid. Headed to Howard on a full scholarship. His crimes, melanin, posture, and certainty. He'd told Maya, eyes glassed with humiliation, that he'd been patted down in front of his girlfriend while an officer called him buddy like a leash. Aunt Maya, they made me feel already guilty. So she'd decided to see the machine from the bottom without privilege smoothing the gears. No judicial escort, no TSA pre-check, no staff. Just a boarding pass to Charleston and a briefcase stuffed with civil rights opinions that had changed the way other judges wrote theirs. Denver had been subtle. Extra questions about destination and purpose. Atlanta was quieter but longer. ID studied like it might confess. Charlotte, though, had Officer Kevin Bradley. Now the terminal was a hive. Maya sat against a support beam, a compression wrap tight around her shoulder, breaths shallow and ticking. A federal marshal arrived, tall and serious, clearly aware that his morning had just become a syllabus. "Ma'am, your presence has triggered protocol alerts all the way to Washington. DOJ is mobilizing. Your court administrator is en route. We need to manage the situation." Manage? Maya's voice could have cut glass. "Marshal, I was shot in a federal facility by a federal officer because he decided my skin was more threatening than my compliance. If you want to manage that, manage this." She held up her phone, Constitutional Emergency Protocol, a secure app she'd designed after too many technical difficulties, magically erased public accountability. Step 1, secure all evidence. Step 2, isolate the narrative. Step 3, control the legal response. She dialed. "Marshal Torres, Washington. I need federal investigative presence at Charlotte Douglas immediately. Full forensic team." "Yes, I'm the victim." "No, you did not mishear me." Across the tarmac, Kevin Bradley sat in a windowless room with his union rep and a department lawyer who looked like he'd rather represent a hurricane. Kevin's leg bounced like it wanted to leave without him. "I didn't know who she was," he kept repeating. "She moved. I thought, what was I supposed to think?" The lawyer counted damage like coins. "You need to stop saying that." "Why?" "It's what happened. Because what you thought is the problem," the lawyer said. "You thought a black woman asking a constitutional question was a threat. You thought compliance wasn't enough. You thought shooting first was justified." Kevin's face flushed dull brick. "She had this attitude, like she thought she was better than me." The union rep shifted as if the chair had grown teeth. The lawyer didn't blink. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "You didn't just shoot a passenger. You shot a federal judge, one whose opinions have been cited by the Supreme Court, the woman who wrote the concurrence that became the playbook for disciplining officers who fabricate furtive movement. You shot her." "Supreme Court?" Kevin whispered. "Welcome to the case law you just authored." In an employee hallway, Jordan Williams paced outside a break room, badge confiscated, access revoked, career on a long, thin thread. HR had said words like insubordination and failure to support a colleague. Before they seized his smartwatch, he'd done one thing that would change everything. Uploaded the video to a secure server and sent a link to Marcus Johnson, an investigative journalist whose articles were measured in corrections issued by powerful people. Marcus wasn't famous. His blue check was consistency, not celebrity. He'd broken the story on sheriff's deputies sharing racist memes in a private chat. He'd resurfaced accidentally deleted body cam footage like it had just gone snorkeling. He built on receipts, not outrage. Jordan's message was skeletal. They shot a federal judge and didn't even know it. Within minutes, Marcus was parsing metadata, cross-referencing flight manifests, pulling Maya's judicial bio. Civil rights champion, constitutional scholar, youngest black woman appointed to the Fourth Circuit. "They picked the wrong woman," he muttered, fingers flying. He uploaded. He mirrored. He published, notifications detonated. In the terminal's medical bay, Maya received an unexpected visitor, Dr. Patricia Adams, chief medical officer at Charlotte Memorial, eyes bright with fury the ER lights couldn't bleach out. "Judge Washington," she said, professional and personal, colliding in a single breath. "I came as soon as I heard. This is—" She groped for the right word and landed on the only honest one. Unconscionable. You've seen this before, Maya said. Not like this, Dr. Adams replied. But yes, then help me make it count. I need legal documentation as much as medical. Timestamps, angles, photographs, not just vitals. I'm not building a hospital chart. I'm building a record. You're going to sue? I'm going to do something better, Maya said. I'm going to change them. By evening, Jordan was terminated. Confidentiality violations, the letter said. Like truth was contraband. But before HR boxed his badge, his phone buzzed with a number he didn't know. Mr. Williams, this is Judge Washington. Are you safe? He swallowed. I think so. But, Judge, Kevin has a pattern. There are complaints, buried ones. There's training material we pretend doesn't exist. Emails. The language is coded, but the outcomes aren't. I saved copies. What kind of copies? Internal threads about behavioral anomalies, code for why certain people get pulled aside so often. A supervisor praising Bradley's intuitive threat assessments, a PowerPoint that lists nonverbal indicators that somehow always look like people of color. Bring it to court, Maya said. I'm convening an emergency hearing. They'll destroy me. They already tried, Maya answered. Now we return the favor. Legally. She hung up and drafted the formal request, Emergency Judicial Review, 4th Circuit, on-site at the Charlotte Federal Courthouse, respondents, Transportation Security Administration, Charlotte Douglas Airport Authority, and Officer Kevin Bradley. Personally and in his official capacity, her phone pinged, unknown number. Standing with you. Hayes, Tudkert, another. You're not alone. Chen, 9th. Another. About time the bullets hit someone with a bench. Santos, 11th. Maya smiled for the first time since the shooting. Morning arrived like a subpoena. Outside the courthouse, protesters and counter-protesters braided into a loud human knot. Inside, the largest courtroom was packed past safe occupancy, spilled into conference rooms, then into hallways with TVs on carts like public school assemblies. At 8:55, Maya entered in full robes. The black hung like armor. The white bandage at her shoulder declared itself anyway. She took her seat. The clerk stood. This emergency federal hearing is now in session. The Honorable Judge Maya Alexandria Washington presiding. We're here, Maya said, to examine the events of April 15th at Charlotte Douglas International, specifically the shooting of a federal judge by TSA officer Kevin Bradley. But we are also here for a larger purpose, to determine whether the security protocols governing American airports are consistent with the Constitution they claim to protect. TSA appears by... An attorney rose, poised but rattled. Jennifer Morrison for the Transportation Security Administration. Your Honor, we maintain Officer Bradley acted within established protocols when confronted with a non-compliant and potentially threatening... Non-compliance where? Maya asked. The subject questioned detention, exhibited verbal resistance, and made sudden... Maya lifted a laptop lid. Bailiff monitors. Screens bloomed. Jordan's watch footage rolled. Maya placing items in the tray, gliding through the metal detector, stopping, hands visible as Bradley approached. His voice already tight, his hand already moving. Her question, why am I being detained? His gun rising before the why, and why had died in the air. His finger white on the trigger. The shots, the fall, the concrete. Silence followed. Not empty, but full. Counselor, Maya said softly. Point to the frame where I failed to comply. Morrison's mouth opened, closed. Your Honor, in a security context, questioning detention can be... In a constitutional context, Maya cut in, questioning detention is protected. Are you arguing TSA policy supersedes the Fourth Amendment? No, Your Honor. Then help me understand why a visibly unarmed passenger, hands open, voice calm, was met with lethal force. No answer came that could survive transcription. The court calls Jordan Williams, Maya said. Jordan walked like a man who'd already lost everything institutionally and discovered he could keep the rest. He swore in. Mr. Williams, Maya said, in your 14 months at TSA, describe what you observed. Patterns, he said. Who gets secondary screening? Who gets questions? Who gets the tone? Black passengers, Latino passengers, Arab passengers. The instructions are neutral. The outcomes aren't. And when people ask why officers like Bradley hear a threat, he held up a flash drive. Emails, reports, training decks. 17 formal complaints against Bradley in a year, all involving minorities, all dismissed as miscommunication or procedural misunderstandings. TSA's attorney shot up. Objection. Undisclosed. Overruled, Maya said. This is an emergency hearing. The emergency is constitutional. In your opinion, Maya asked, was April 15th an isolated misjudgment? It was inevitable, Jordan said. Bradley has been escalating. The system taught him to call it vigilance. Officer Bradley, Maya said. Take the stand, his lawyer whispered. But the room was already watching Bradley rise like gravity had doubled. He swore in, knuckles pale. You shot me 3 times, Maya said. Look at me and tell this court why. He tried not to meet her eyes. She waited. He looked, flinched. I thought you were a threat. Based on what? You questioned detention. You weren't respectful. Is respect for your authority a requirement for not being shot? No, but you have to understand, we see a lot of what? Everyone knew the missing word. Few said it under oath. People who don't respect authority, he managed. What kind of people? He flushed, glanced toward counsel, toward the agency row, toward the ceiling. The silence pressed. When you saw me approach that checkpoint, Maya asked, what did you see? The longest minute of his career ended with the shortest confession of his life. I saw a black woman who thought she was better than me. The courtroom blew apart. Shouts, sobs, keys clattering like hail. Maya's gavel cracked once. Order returned like a held breath let go. Thank you for your honesty, she said. No further questions. Dr. Patricia Adams, Maya called next. 3 wounds. Dr. Adams testified, 1 graze with tissue damage, 2 impacts that would have taken center mass if not for movement at the last instant. These weren't warning shots, she said. They were intended to neutralize, permanently. Objection. Speculation, TSA's counsel barked. 30 years of forensic pathology, Maya said. Overruled. In your experience, Maya asked, how does this compare to other incidents you've documented? The clearest racially motivated assault by a federal officer that I've seen, Dr. Adams said, and the pattern around it is institutional. Maya thanked her. Supervisor Richards, he crossed like a man walking through molasses. He sat, swore, shifted. How many complaints against Officer Bradley in 12 months? Maya asked. I'd have to check. 17, Maya said, lifting a folder. All dismissed by your office. We followed protocol. The protocol that protects biased officers. There is no such... Complaint 1. Maya read. Deshaun Thompson, 17, detained for furtive behavior, later identified as reading a college acceptance letter while black. Your note. Additional screening warranted. Complaint 2. Maria Gonzalez. Infant daughter stripped with her, Bradley claiming distraction tactic. Your note. Caution appropriate. Shall I continue? He sagged. We receive hundreds of complaints. Not like these. Not like his. Did you know Bradley had bias issues? There were indicators. What did you do? Spoke to him, informally. About his tendency to treat black passengers as threats? I told him to be more diplomatic. Maya let the admission sit hot and loud. How many black TSA agents report to you? 3 of 47. How many filed workplace complaints? He swallowed. All 3? Resolved how? Diversity training, counseling. So when Bradley shot me, it wasn't a rogue act, Maya said. It was a predictable outcome of a culture you supervised. He had no answer the transcript could bear. The court calls Marcus Johnson. Marcus took the stand with the calm of a man who double sources his own heartbeat. 3 years investigating TSA practices, he testified. 17 airports, 12 states, 437 documented incidents of profiling complaints, most dismissed without investigation. With the court's permission, Marcus said, an audio recording from an Atlanta training 6 months ago. The speakers hissed. A male instructor's voice filled the room. I'm not saying profile based on race, that's illegal. We don't do that here, but certain demographic groups tend to exhibit behaviors that correlate with risk. You'll learn to recognize the signs, the attitude, the way they carry themselves, the questions they ask. Trust your instincts. Political correctness gets officers killed. Name? Maya asked. Assistant Director Michael Chen, National Training Division, Marcus answered. He's given that talk 40+ times. Maya stared at the state seal above her head. It stared back. No further questions. That night, subpoenas flew like winter birds, servers, backups, supervisors, the airport authority. Assistant Director Chen, FBI agents arrived before dawn to lock racks and image drives. A preservation order hit inboxes with the weight of a falling safe. Anyone deleting files would meet a different kind of custody. By morning, the courthouse steps were a canyon of cameras. A reporter shouted, "Judge Washington, are you concerned about presiding over your own case?" "In America," Maya said, turning to the mics for the first time, "we say justice delayed is justice denied. If I recuse, the case goes to someone who didn't bleed on that floor and who might accept explanations the Constitution does not. I was shot because the system failed. The system doesn't get to investigate itself while I sit quietly on the sidelines to make everyone comfortable." Inside, TSA had upgraded counsel. Former Attorney General Patricia Donovan, blazer sharp, temper sharper. Kevin Bradley's family sat small and furious. Civil rights leaders filled the aisles like living footnotes to a history book nobody finished in class. At 9 a.m., Maya returned to the bench wearing the same robes and a thin chain carrying her grandmother's ring. The clerk called. The room rose. The room sat. "Yesterday," Maya began, "this court heard testimony revealing systematic bias within TSA operations. Overnight, we learned of attempted evidence destruction and witness intimidation. What began as a single shooting has become an examination of institutional corruption." "Your Honor," Donovan said, already standing, "on behalf of TSA, I move for immediate dismissal for judicial bias and prosecutorial misconduct. The victim of an alleged crime cannot preside over its prosecution. You argue that being harmed by injustice disqualifies someone from recognizing it," Maya replied. "Should female judges recuse from sexual assault cases for being women? Should black judges recuse from civil rights cases for being black?" Motion denied. The court calls FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen. Agent Chen testified with the unsmiling precision of a pen that only writes indictments. "We recovered evidence of systematic evidence destruction spanning multiple years," she said. "An internal playbook for making discrimination complaints disappear. 847 profiling complaints in 3 years. 831 dismissed without investigation. The rest? Informal counseling." "And regarding April 15? Maya asked. "Within 4 hours of the shooting," Agent Chen said, "local servers began a coordinated purge. Backup drives queued for wipe. Witnesses were reassigned to other states. Internal emails referred to the victim as the problem judge and discussed ways to neutralize her credibility." Donovan objected. Overruled. The transcript swelled. "One more finding," Chen added. 2 years ago in Denver, Officer Bradley discharged his weapon in a fatal shooting involving a Latino father traveling with 2 children. Ruled justified. Our review indicates the same pattern of bias and suppression." The room ruptured again, reporters sprinting for the doors, family members crying, a righteous, terrible sound. Maya's gavel returned order. "This court will recess for 30 minutes, she said. When we return, I will issue my ruling." She stood. The seal watched. The cameras watched. The country, suddenly very awake, watched. Blood streaming down her arm, Judge Maya Washington stood taller than the fear around her. The terminal had become a courtroom, and every breath in that airport was now under oath. "You just shot a federal judge, officer," she said, voice steady as the Constitution. "I suggest you holster that weapon immediately." No one moved. Kevin Bradley's finger twitched once, then fell limp against the side of his service pistol. The echo of her words rippled through the crowd, through passengers clutching phones, through agents frozen mid-command. through the humming silence of shock that always follows violence when authority is the trigger. Paramedics burst through the metal detectors, but Maya raised her hand. "Not yet," she ordered. "No one touches me until every body camera, every security feed, and every witness statement is preserved. This is a federal crime scene now." A trembling young agent, Jordan Williams, stepped forward, the only one in uniform whose courage hadn't fled. "I recorded everything," he said. His smartwatch blinked red. "The whole thing?" "It's backed up already." Maya nodded once, pain crawling up her arm. "Then you just became the most important witness in America." Outside, news alerts screamed across the internet like sirens in digital form. Federal judge shot by TSA officer in Charlotte. Within an hour, the footage was online. By the second hour, hashtags were marching like protest banners. Ask why, Eschker Judge Washington, Justice in Terminal C. In a coffee shop downtown, journalist Marcus Johnson hit play for the 15th time. Frame by frame, he dissected the truth like evidence in a trial he'd been preparing for his whole life. The judge's hands, open, visible. The officer's draw, premature. The shots, unjustifiable. He didn't flinch when he whispered to himself, "They picked the wrong woman to profile." By the third hour, her name was on every channel. By the sixth, the DOJ had already convened an emergency task force. And by the ninth, Maya Washington was no longer just a judge. She was the case. She sat in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and chaos. Her coat, blood-soaked, lay folded on a chair beside the bed. A nurse hovered uncertainly until Maya lifted her chin. "The cameras," she said, voice weak but unwavering. "Have they pulled the feeds?" "The FBI's requesting them, ma'am," the nurse replied. "But TSA's claiming a system malfunction." "Convenient," Maya murmured. She turned her head slowly toward the window where blue lights still flashed outside. "Call my clerk," she said. "Tell her I want the emergency constitutional protocol initiated. And get me my laptop." 2 floors below, Officer Kevin Bradley sat in a sterile conference room, flanked by a union representative and a government lawyer who looked like a man already writing his resignation letter. Kevin's leg bounced with the rhythm of denial. "I didn't know who she was," he muttered for the 20th time. She reached fast. "Could have been anything." The lawyer didn't look up from his notes. "What you thought is the problem, Officer Bradley? You thought compliance wasn't enough. You thought fear was evidence?" Kevin's voice cracked. "She had this attitude, like she thought she was better than me." The lawyer finally met his eyes. "She was better than you. She's a federal judge." Meanwhile, Jordan Williams had been suspended, his badge confiscated, his access revoked. But before they'd locked him out of the system, he'd uploaded his recording to a secure cloud. He sent the link to Marcus Johnson with one line of text. They shot a federal judge and didn't even know it. By sunset, Marcus's expose was live. She didn't even flinch. The moment a judge became evidence. Within an hour, 50,000 shares. Within 3, 500,000. In Washington, senators called emergency briefings. On cable news, pundits spun chaos into content. But in her hospital bed, Maya ignored all of it. She was drafting a document titled Emergency Judicial Review Petition, Transportation Security Administration et al. Her fingers moved slow but certain. She wasn't writing for herself. She was writing for everyone who'd been silenced by procedure. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Judge Washington?" a voice said softly. "This is Jordan Williams. They fired me. They're calling it insubordination." "You did the right thing," Maya said. "There's more," he whispered. "Internal memos. Training slides. Stuff they told us never to copy. It's all coded, but it's there. Behavioral anomalies. Intuitive threat assessment. All of it targeting minorities." "I saved everything." "Bring it," she said. "Tomorrow. Federal courthouse. 9 a.m. They'll destroy me." "They already tried," Maya replied. "Now it's our turn." At dawn, Charlotte's federal courthouse was surrounded by cameras, marshals, and history in the making. Inside, every seat was filled. TSA executives, journalists, community leaders, and citizens who had driven through the night to see a woman turn pain into precedent. When Maya entered, Wearing her judicial robe over a white bandage, the room rose as one. She took her seat at the bench, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "This emergency hearing is now in session," she said. "We are here to determine whether the Transportation Security Administration's security practices are consistent with the United States Constitution." TSA's attorney stood, pale and trembling. "Your Honor, with respect, this proceeding will continue," Maya interrupted. "Counselor, your client's employee shot a federal judge yesterday. If you think I'm waiting for bureaucracy to catch up, you've mistaken me for someone who hasn't been shot." A hush fell. Jordan Williams was called first. He rose from the gallery like a man walking toward both ruin and redemption. "I was there," he said, voice steady. "I watched everything." He described what he'd seen. The calmness of her tone, the sharpness of Bradley's fear, the inevitability of a system trained to see color before compliance. "It's not just him," Jordan said. "It's the culture. We're told to trust our instincts. But whose instincts? The ones that panic when they see black skin?" Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Maya nodded once, motioning for him to continue. "I have proof," Jordan said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. "Emails, reports, hidden complaint files. I copied them before they could erase them." The TSA lawyer shot up. "Objection! Unauthorized evidence. Overruled," Maya said. "Mr. Williams, please submit the drive to the court." He handed it to the clerk, hands shaking but sure. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "I joined TSA to protect people. But I've learned that sometimes protection becomes prejudice with a badge." Maya's throat tightened. "And what do they teach you about compliance?" "That it isn't just about obeying orders," he said. "It's about tone, about fear, about knowing your place." She let the silence stretch until every heart in that room felt the weight of his words. Then she said, "Thank you, Agent Williams. You may step down." Kevin Bradley was next. He looked hollow, a man stripped of illusion. "Officer Bradley," Maya began, "you fired 3 rounds at an unarmed woman. Look at me and explain why." Kevin's jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, "You looked like—" "You thought you were better than me," the room gasped. Maya didn't blink. "And what made you think that, officer?" "You didn't look scared," he said. "You asked questions like you had the right to answers." Her voice was soft, surgical. "And in your training, what happens to black women who ask questions?" His eyes glistened. "They get reminded to stay in their place." It was the confession of a system, not just a man. Reporters were already typing furiously, phones lighting up as if the courtroom itself were on fire. Maya leaned forward. "Officer Bradley, this court finds that your fear was not instinct. It was bias, and your bullets were not protection. They were prejudice made manifest." He swallowed hard, silent. But Maya wasn't done. "This is bigger than you. It's about the doctrine that trained you to mistake authority for virtue. That ends today." When she struck the gavel, it sounded less like wood on wood and more like judgment on history itself. Outside, the world was already roaring, crowds chanting her name, others defending the system she'd just dismantled. But Maya didn't hear any of it. She was already writing the next order. One that would not just convict a man, but rewrite the laws that had built him absolutely. Here's part 3, continuing seamlessly from where part 2 ended. No headings, same cinematic, emotional, and powerful tone. This final part closes the story. Judge Maya Washington's reckoning, her ruling, and the change that follows. 10,000 characters. Night swallowed the courthouse like a verdict not yet spoken. The corridors were empty except for the echo of Maya Washington's footsteps and the low hum of printers spitting out subpoenas, affidavits, truth. Her shoulder burned, but pain had become background noise. Adrenaline had rewritten her nerves. On the desk before her sat 2 stacks of paper. One, the evidence that proved the system's guilt. The other, her ruling that would decide what America did about it. She stared at the first line for a long moment before typing, "The Constitution was not written in fear." Outside, news vans camped like siege engines. Reporters whispered theories, protesters sang hymns, and on social media, the word justice trended higher than any celebrity ever had. Inside, Maya whispered to herself, "If justice is blind, Tonight she learns to see. At 3:12 a.m., her phone vibrated. A text from Jordan Williams. "They're deleting files, Judge. Just got an internal email." "Full system purge," she exhaled sharply. "Then we move now." Within the hour, federal marshals stormed TSA headquarters under her emergency order. Servers seized. Backups frozen. For the first time in decades, the government's machinery of secrecy jammed mid-spin. When the call came confirming the data was safe, Maya simply said, "Good. Then the truth lives another day." By sunrise, the courthouse steps looked like a pilgrimage. People held signs that read, "Ask why," and she turned pain into law. They weren't chanting her name. They were chanting an idea she'd carved into the system with her own blood. At 9 sharp, she entered the courtroom, the robe heavy with meaning. Cameras lined the walls. The entire nation was watching. Kevin Bradley sat pale and hollow beside his lawyer. Behind them, TSA executives shifted nervously, faces gray from sleeplessness and scandal. Maya raised the gavel. "This court is in session." Every word that followed would echo through law schools and protests for generations. Yesterday, we heard testimony that exposed not only an act of violence, but the blueprint that allowed it. Officer Bradley's bullets were not born in isolation. They were raised by policy. A ripple of murmurs. Maya continued, unblinking. "This court finds that Officer Bradley is guilty of assault with a deadly weapon under color of federal authority. But guilt does not end with a trigger pull. It begins with training manuals, with supervisors who call prejudice protocol, and with a nation that mistakes suspicion for safety." Kevin looked up as if hearing his life collapse in surround sound. Maya didn't look away. "You were taught to trust your fear more than someone else's humanity. You were told instinct keeps you alive. It keeps others dead." She turned toward the TSA lawyers. "The institution that trained him is equally culpable. For years, you have built an empire of anxiety. You have made ordinary citizens rehearse submission so you could call it security. That ends now." She took a deep breath, feeling the courtroom hold it with her. Effective immediately. This court orders federal oversight of the Transportation Security Administration for a minimum of 5 years. Every screening, every stop, every search will be audited under civil rights supervision. Any agent found engaging in bias-based enforcement will be terminated and subject to federal prosecution. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Reporters scrambled to record each syllable. Maya pressed on, voice calm and absolute. "Second, a national review of all federal law enforcement training protocols. No longer will instinct be defined by fear or authority by aggression. Every federal officer will undergo constitutional rights recertification. Passing will be mandatory. Failure will mean dismissal." Gasps spread across the room, but she wasn't finished. "Third, the creation of an independent civilian oversight board empowered to investigate misconduct across all agencies. Their authority will not depend on the goodwill of those they police. It will be law." The TSA's lead attorney stood, voice shaking. "Your Honor, this exceeds your jurisdiction." "Sit down," Maya said. "My jurisdiction begins where justice was violated. Yesterday, that jurisdiction was written in my blood on your airport floor." The room went silent. The cameras, the murmurs, even the protest chants outside seemed to vanish into that moment. Maya lifted the final page of her ruling. "This nation was built on the promise that rights are not conditional. No citizen should fear death for asking a question. No badge justifies prejudice. The doctrine that allowed this must end here. From this day forward, federal officers will be bound by a new constitutional framework, one that recognizes dignity as security and equality as law." She paused, eyes steady on the crowd. "This will be known as the Washington Doctrine." And then she struck the gavel. The sound didn't echo. It detonated. Applause erupted, half relief, half disbelief. Civil rights lawyers cried openly. Journalists clapped before remembering they weren't supposed to. The chants outside grew louder. "Justice is watching. Justice is here." Maya sat motionless for a long moment. When she finally rose, it was not triumph that filled her chest. It was quiet, hard peace. The kind that only comes when truth has been dragged into daylight and survives. That evening, she stood at her hotel window, watching the protests turn into celebrations. Fireworks bloomed over downtown Charlotte, red, white, and a brilliant gold that painted the courthouse dome like sunrise. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus Johnson, the journalist who had started the storm. Judge, the Supreme Court just refused an emergency stay. Your ruling stands, she smiled faintly. Then so does the truth. 6 months later, the airport was different. Metal detectors hummed with routine calm. Officers smiled, not because they'd been told to, but because respect had replaced suspicion. Travelers moved like citizens, not suspects. A young officer gestured politely. Ma'am, please place your bag on the belt. Maya looked up at her name tag, Williams. Any relation to Jordan Williams? She asked. The officer grinned. He's my brother, FBI now. Civil Rights Division. Good, Maya said. He's exactly where he belongs. As she passed through the scanner, no alarms screamed, no weapons raised. Just the steady hum of a nation trying to be better. Near the gate, Marcus Johnson waved from a seat, tablet in hand. Headed to D.C.? Congress, she said. They're expanding the doctrine to state police. He turned the screen toward her. Polls show 73% public support. Even old critics are calling it the most significant civil rights reform in 50 years. Turns out, he said, people don't like getting shot for existing. Maya laughed softly, the first real laugh in months. Justice was always common sense. We just had to remind the country. When the plane lifted into the sky, she opened her laptop to review a speech she'd been avoiding. The heading read, Presidential Medal of Freedom Address. She stared at the blinking cursor, then began to type something different. 6 months ago, I was shot in an airport terminal for asking a question. Today, I fly to the Capitol to remind America that the question was never the crime. She paused, watching clouds slide beneath the wing. The real heroes of that day were the people who refused silence. The whistleblowers, the journalists, the witnesses. They taught us that justice isn't a job, it's a chorus. And when one voice is punished for speaking, others must rise to finish the sentence. She saved the document, closed the laptop, and looked out the window. The sunrise reflected on the glass like a gavel made of light. At that same moment, in a North Carolina prison cell, Kevin Bradley sat alone with a letter he hadn't expected. It was from Maya. Mr. Bradley, it read, I do not hate you. Hate built the cage you live in. I only ask that when you leave it. You never carry fear as a weapon again. He folded the letter slowly, tears catching in the corners of his eyes. For the first time, he understood what justice felt like when it didn't look like vengeance. Months later, Maya Washington stood again before cameras, not in a robe, but in a black suit, the Medal of Freedom glinting softly against her chest. She spoke without notes. I became a judge to serve justice, she said. But I learned that sometimes you must step outside the system to fix it. The Washington Doctrine isn't mine alone. It belongs to everyone who refused to bow to fear. It belongs to the Jordan Williamses, the Marcus Johnsons, the passengers who kept filming, the mothers who kept believing their children deserved to come home. She looked straight into the camera, her voice both fierce and kind. When they try to silence you with violence, she said, answer with justice so loud the world can't look away. The crowd rose in thunder. Flags waved. The president wiped away a tear. And somewhere far beyond the hall, in airports and precincts and classrooms across the country, people watched and whispered the same word that had started it all. Justice. The bullets had missed their mark. But her voice never did, and America, finally, was listening.